Hi, it's Kylie Coo. Welcome to my studio. So today I am working on one of my autumn fall projects. I did one previously, I'll link it above, and I did say I would do a few more, so here's one of them. So today I'm going to be making tags, autumn fall tags. So I already have some leaves pressed, but I came across these out in the garden and they're a bit redder than the other ones that I've got. I've also printed off a list of kind of words, and this is the thing that I stamped previously, and I've made a copy of that to use, and in fact I've loaded that now into my Etsy shop if anybody was interested in purchasing it. So what I'm trying to do is to get all the things that I need to make the tags prepared now, so the things that are going to take time to dry. So I'm going to be working on the leaves. This is just a piece of, I'm not quite sure, kind of linen calico type material that I want to use as the ties on the tags. So that was a leaf that I just saw a minute ago. I liked it, although it's quite new, or newly fallen anyway. Suddenly noticed there was a little beastie running across there, so I had to take everything off my table and put the little beastie outside. I always try with leaves to make sure that there's nothing on them, but sometimes when it's something as small as that, it's quite difficult to see. So this is one way that I preserve leaves that I might then go on to use in art. So this time I'm just using some Mod Podge and giving it a good coat on one side. Now I don't put it on the other side because in fact I will put glue onto that when I'm gluing it down to something. Now, sometimes people ask me if leaves will last in art. To be honest, I don't know. They won't last forever. I think they will start to break down even underneath a layer of Mod Podge. But I've got things that I made a few years ago and the leaves are still holding well. So, you know, I'm quite happy to use them in my art. So I've put them off to the side to dry. Now what I want to do is just add a little bit of colour to the ties that I'm going to put on the tag. So just using these couple of glimmer mists. The bluey green, the patina wasn't exactly the colour I wanted, but I don't have a lot of glimmer mists, so I'm using what I've got. So I had just sprayed them onto this piece of greaseproof paper, added a bit of water, although I felt the patina was just a bit too light, so just adding a bit more there. It's a bit of a messy job this. I should have actually put some gloves on because I did end up staining my fingers quite a bit. I should say that as far as possible I always try and wear art guard. I do sometimes forget, but that, you know, something like that, or the gloves in a bottle type thing's quite good. So I'm just taking a couple of inks here, ink pads, and just laying them onto the greaseproof paper. Again, just adding a little bit of water, and I'll do likewise with these strands, just letting them soak up some of that colour. Just trying to make these quite grungy. I didn't want them being all one colour, and I'm quite happy that the threads are kind of loose on the ends of them. I did add in a couple of small bits of cheesecloth later just to let them do as well, and again I put them off to the side to dry. So now just cutting out some leaves from my copy. Just going to use a couple of these. I want to show how I use these and also how I use real leaves, and I also use my stamps that I had created in the first place, the foam stamps that I created in that last video. So just going round the edge of those with sepia. So I'm going to work on the 6 tags at once, and I'm taking this fluid acrylic, just putting a dab on each card, smoothing it out a little. Decide to use a paintbrush now, and I'm trying to get an uneven look to it. I don't want it looking all smooth, so because I will be going on to add some other colours to it. And when I'm doing this, it's like working on ATCs. I often like to work on several at one time. especially where they're part of a group. It's different if it's a one-off. So now taking this green yellow, I place it to the side because that particular bottle has a habit of a lot coming out at once, and it's a very strong pigment in the green. Just using the brush, quite a light action, just to kind of feather it across here and there. Adding some water, just so that that green will move a little bit. Just taking this piece of paper, it's caddy paper, it's very textured, and that will just help lift the excess paint and water that was sitting on them, and I do give them a dry at this point. Now I'm going to add my third colour. Just want almost a bit of a kind of red in here now, just trying to reflect the colours of autumn. I like to keep the green in because, well, often even on the autumn leaves you'll still sometimes see some touches of green, but also in the kind of surrounding plants. If you have evergreens around, you know, there's always a bit of greenery still there, so I do like the green still to show through. And again, just kind of dabbing that around, just wanting it to touch the card in certain places, and yet not trying to blend it in too much. And again, the added water just helps get that slightly uneven effect. Some bits will be slightly lighter than others. Decided that I needed a little bit more here and there. And I really just keep going with this until I get the colour to a level that I'm happy with. And giving it a good dry now. Again, just using that bit of caddy paper to take up the excess that's there. Obviously you could use kitchen towel or something like that, but by putting it on that paper I can use that paper again at some point. Some paint's gone onto the back, but I actually quite like that. And just looking at how my little pieces of ribbon and that will fit in. Now those actually took ages to dry, and I did actually end up putting them in the oven just to dry a bit. The leaves took a while as well, although there was a couple that was sufficiently dry when it came to it that I was able to use. But the others that I didn't use will be there for future projects. So I'm just looking at how I might layer some things up. I, in the end, didn't use much of the fabric that I'd looked out, but I do use that small doily and those pieces of music sheet. So decide now that the doily is very white looking and it needs to be distressed a bit, so just using that distress spray. Again, just mopping up, taking off the excess when necessary. Take this one in tarnished brass, but there's something wrong with the top on it, so I'm going to have to clean that, but I end up just taking the top off and just putting a bit of the ink over that way. I'll then spray it, and that helps spread it a bit. So with the excess that's on there, I just take my pieces of music paper and just start to get them covered, and I end up adding more ink as well, just so that I can get them fully covered. And I always try and mop up one way or another all the excess paint or ink. I really don't like to see any going to waste, so And that's why you see me going back time and time again with that. And at that point they need a really good dry. So as I say, just getting all my elements together before I start to assemble the cards. Had a piece of cardboard here. I thought that might be something that would be quite good to add. I have added cardboard to tags and ATCs before. I decide I'll put a bit of colour on these before I start. So again, taking some of that tarnished brass. And I do wet the cardboard and have to give it a good dry. And sometimes with cardboard it's best not to wet it too much because it can go a bit soggy, but I had plenty there. If it hadn't worked out, it wouldn't have mattered too much. So just trying in a sense to replicate some of the colours that are on the tags themselves. Although you'll see me in a moment add the green. After that I do think it's more a bit kind of Christmassy looking with those colours, but I go with it anyway. I think once it's against the tag it doesn't look quite so bad. You see me watering them down, just trying to mix some of that colour a bit. And then I have to give them a really good dry. Otherwise they might have just disintegrated. So that's now dry. The piece of greaseproof paper actually has quite a nice look to it, so I will possibly use that again for something else in future. So I've now got out the foam stamps, and you would see me making those in the video that I've linked above, and just looking at how I might fit these onto the tags. So I think in the end of the 6 tags I do 2 that are stamped, I do 2 using real leaves, and I do 2 using the leaves out of my digital download. So with the ones that I'm stamping, I've decided that I'm actually going to use the embossing on them. So just using this embossing ink pad, and then I'll put the embossing powder down afterwards. And just using my acrylic block there just to push it right down and hopefully get a good stamp from it. So using the gold, and now just going to put the excess back into the pot. So I just hold the tag in place with the end of that small paintbrush and use my heat tool to activate the powder. And I'm quite pleased with the way that that's turned out. And looking at how I might arrange the stamps on this one. And again, I'm going to emboss these. So I load each one up with the embossing ink and then set them in place. And then again, I'll take my acrylic block just to push them down. Giving them a really firm push down. Still had some gold left there. I just put that onto the card and then I take the bronze and add it on. So just shaking off and lightly brushing off the excess, and then again I'll put that back into the pot. And then again use my heat tool to activate the powder. And again, I'm quite pleased with the way that that's turned out. And all I'm going to do now is to go round them with the sepia ink. Now I'm putting this on quite firmly because I want the ink to kind of be thick but to come over the sides. So not blending it in other words, but having it thick enough that it will give an uneven finish to it. And I put them off to the side to dry. So looking at how I might use a bit of the doily. And putting a piece of the music paper behind it. Then thinking about adding in a piece of cheesecloth. Now this is a stage where, sometimes this can come together very quickly, or other times, I might play about with it for a little while. And I think I actually turned the doily round there to the other side because I felt it was just a little bit lighter. Decide to go round my leaf that I've cut out with a bit of gold, and I do the same with the piece of music. And I go round the edges of the doily with the sepia ink. Still thinking about how I'm going to arrange them and which leaf that I'm actually going to use. Now I decide at this point that actually I want the leaves to look a little bit darker in colour. And this is one thing about digital downloads. You don't have to use them as is. You can add to them, you can add colour or whatever and just make it your own. And I'm not just talking about the ones that I offer, I'm talking about the ones that anybody offers. And for me, that leaf is now quite natural looking in terms of some of the ones that I was looking at earlier. They do come in different colours. They don't always have an even tone across them. So just using some matte medium now to glue everything into place. And I give the whole card quite a good layer of that. I don't just stick to the pieces that I'm gluing down. So I put that off to the side to dry and then look at the next one. And just looking at if I can add in a piece of the cardboard and again a piece of the cheesecloth. Looking at a real leaf this time. This one is virtually dry. There's still a tiny bit of glue that's not quite dry on it, but it'll be getting another layer over the top anyway. Again, giving the card quite a good coat all over. And the thing about the cheesecloth is it gives that bit of added texture and interest to it. So putting the matte medium on the back of the leaf. And now what I'll try and do with my paintbrush is just to try and push it right down so it makes good contact. Now bits will pop up and I don't mind them actually, so long as most of the leaf is down and in place, so long as it's holding well, it doesn't matter if there's some bits coming up. So again, taking one of the other leaves from my download, and again just adding a bit of colour. Bit more colour to it anyway, just so that it will fit in with this particular project. And I actually like the way this one, that the kind of tarnished brass showed up on it a bit. It's difficult to see there, but it actually meant that when the light was hitting it at times, it was really quite nice. Give it a kind of glossy look, again, just as some of the leaves are. So I'd gone round edges there with the embossing ink pad, and now just trying to pick up some of that copper powder. And again, just activating it. Wasn't looking for it to have even coverage. And you can see it's just caught it at the edges. And on little bits inside. And again, looking at my arrangement here. And gluing everything into place. And for the next card, I do a mixture of both the cutouts, and I also take a real leaf this time and add it in. Just looking at kind of different arrangements and what looks best to my eye. Other people might come up with a different arrangement. It's just whatever looks best to yourself at the time, I think. Now I don't adjust the colour on these ones. I like the fact that this almost gives a nice background to the real leaf that I'm going to put on here. And I like the fact that, you know, we've got the kind of brown leaf from the download, the sort of yellow one, gold yellow, and then this red leaf at the front. So I've been round, I think, all the cards with some sepia ink, just round the edges, just to finish them off. I then decided that I would just take a black gel pen and just do quite a sketchy line around each leaf. I took a few moments to decide whether or not I wanted to do that, but in the end I decided, well, once I'd committed to it and started it, I thought it was the right thing to do. I make the line sketchy just because often leaves are not perfect in their shape, so just trying to bring that out. And it also just gives a little bit, I guess, of a kind of shadow effect. And I do that with them all. So just before I attach the ribbons, I actually scanned the 6 tags onto one sheet of paper, the actual piece of tea-dyed paper, tea-stained paper. And I've also made that available in my Etsy shop, and I'll put the link to my Etsy shop below. And I think it came out really well. So it's the type of thing that could be cut out and just stuck onto heavier cardstock. You know, you could print it onto cardstock or print it onto just normal computer paper and then glue it to a thicker bit of paper and make tags from them. More could be added to it, you know, they could be left as is, or it could form the background for a more detailed tag. So those 6 plus the words that you can see in the top left hand of the screen there are actually available as a digital download. And I'm just putting the ribbons on. The ribbons are quite grungy, but I like them. So just adding those, and I'm actually also going to put these original tags into my Etsy shop as well. The only 2 that I won't put in are the ones with the real leaves on them, and that's because, you know, if it was someone out with the UK that was buying, I'm not sure that under customs rules, I think maybe real leaves would be considered to be plant life, so I know there's rules about exporting that type of thing. So I'm putting 4 tags in, and you'll see the 4 tags at the end of this. And with the tags, I will also include a copy of the sort of autumn words on a sheet of tea-stained paper. So these are the finished tags. And all in all, I was quite pleased with the way that they turned out. I didn't do anything to the back. I personally like to see the kind of bits of paint and that on the back, though sometimes I do add tea-stained paper to the back of that, but no, I was quite pleased with the way that they turned out. I've not added the words, as I say. I'm going to include them in my Etsy shop with the various items. So here's an image of all the completed tags. Here's a digital download available. And here's the 4 tags that I'll be putting up in my Etsy shop as well. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.